Hmm. Yeah.
Because I don't have an account. Like it would be dumb if I set one up. Oh, you're working.
Do you have your phone?
Yeah. Should we get it?
I might know it.
Laura, why don't you start? I have an error with this video and I'll see if I can get it to play at the end.
Okay, will do. Thank you, Jan. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here this morning. I'm Laura Jester. I'm the administrator for the Bassett Creek Watershed Management Commission. And I'm joined today by Brooke Asleson with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. I've been with Bassett for about 9 years, and Brooke has been with the PCA for 14 years and has been working on chloride issues that entire time. So Brooke, if you want to advance the slide here. Bassett Creek Watershed is in the metro area, right in Hennepin County. We're about 40 square miles, and we're a highly urbanized watershed. Lots of impervious surfaces, several major highway corridors, lots of residential, but also some multifamily housing, a lot of commercial development, some industrial. So just a lot of impervious areas. And with all those people and the need for them to travel around, you can imagine how much salt is put on our roadways and our sidewalks and our parking lots each year. So for that reason, we have a lot of chloride impaired water bodies. Unfortunately, we only have 10 lakes in our watershed, but 3 of them are impaired for chloride and 2 of them are near the impairment level for chlorides. And we have 2 large stream segments that are also impaired for chlorides. Overall, unfortunately, we have the 2nd highest chloride levels in the whole metro area out of all the streams that are monitored by Met Council and their monitoring program. So quite a problem. And Brooke is going to go through all of the issues with chloride pollution, but we can't fix this on our own. So if you want to advance the slide, Brooke, we of course are partnering with others on trying to figure out how to address this chloride pollution. Several years ago, the 11 watersheds in Hennepin County pooled some of their watershed-based implementation funding from the Clean Water Fund, about $100,000 worth, to try and collectively address chloride pollution across the whole county. So we've contributed to or have paid for several projects and reports out of this. We started off with a technical barriers survey and report that really identified that the end users, the clients, are some of the folks most responsible for the high chloride or the amount of salt being put down. A lot of the private applicators understand that they're probably putting down too much salt, but they are responding to their client demands. We also developed some chloride management plan templates. That was a recent thing that was done, and I think Brooke might talk about that. They're posted on the PCA's website. This Hennepin County Chloride Initiative also contributed to the development of a smart salting guide for property managers, which is a key target audience of this work that we do. And we're putting funding towards chloride reduction planning in a specific sub-watershed of Parker's Lake. And we're just recently starting to, we are contracting with a professional marketing firm to develop a targeted marketing campaign. So really trying to zero in on key messages that are going to resonate with our target audiences across the county. So we're working on that together, but one of the agencies that's been with us all along, of course, is the Pollution Control Agency. And Brooke's going to do the bulk of this presentation, but the PCA has really been a key partner with our Hennepin County Chloride Initiative. They have developed a statewide chloride management plan. As you'll hear from Brooke, chloride pollution is not just a problem in the highly urbanized areas of our state, and there's all kinds of sources of chloride in addition to road salt. They of course have the smart salting training and certification program, an assessment tool, and a whole long list of chloride reduction resources. So I just thought we would take this opportunity to hear directly from the PCA and all of the resources that are available to your organizations across the state to help address this issue. So take it away, Brooke. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Laura, for that introduction. And it has been a pleasure to partner, be part of that Hennepin County Chloride Initiative. It's been great to hear all of the great ideas and interest in helping to address this pollutant. So as Laura mentioned, I'm going to cover all the details here. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So why are we so concerned about chloride or salt? Sometimes we'll use those terms kind of interchangeably, but really they are different. The salts that we're concerned about here contain chloride. So any of those salts that have chloride on the end of them are the ones that are causing problems for our water resources. And the problems they're causing is they are toxic to our freshwater species. And we have a standard in place that's designed to protect our freshwater aquatic life, and that is 230 milligrams per liter. That is equivalent to about 1 teaspoon of salt in a 5-gallon bucket of water. So it really does not take very much salt before it starts to cause problems for our freshwater species. Now, we adopted EPA's federal standard, which was developed back in the 70s. That is currently under review and revision. We will see kind of what they come out with, but so far the indications that I am hearing and some of the new standards that have come out of other states are indicating that in order to actually be truly protective of aquatic life, we really need to probably lower that number. The state of Michigan just came out with their own chloride standard, and it is set at 150 milligrams per liter. And then in Canada, I believe theirs is about 120 milligrams per liter. So although our friends over in Wisconsin have a slightly higher one at 320 milligrams per liter. So there is some differences there, but I think everyone agrees that we are starting to see negative impacts on certain types of freshwater species at even lower levels than 230. And one of the other big challenges with chloride is that it's a permanent pollutant. I wish I had come up with forever pollutant before they did for PFAS, but that was more catchy, I think, than permanent pollutant. But it's the same concept. Once chloride has bonded with water, it does not break down over time. It does not get converted into anything less toxic, and it really doesn't get used up, or it does not attach to anything else in the environment. So it will attach to that water molecule and flow with that water wherever the water goes, may it be our lakes, our streams, or our groundwater. And we do have elevated concentrations of chloride in our shallow aquifers across the state. We also have seen some negative impacts from chloride on how it affects lakes and actually stormwater ponds' abilities to mix. Salt water is heavier than fresh water. And so when you get that buildup of chloride in a lake or a wetland or a stormwater pond, what tends to happen is you get this heavy layer of chloride water down at the bottom, which makes it difficult for lakes to actually mix. And there was some good research that came out of the University of Minnesota the last few years indicating that these higher concentrations of chloride in our stormwater ponds may also be contributing to the release of phosphorus. So there's all kinds of negative impacts. And of course, we all see and experience the damage that salt causes to our infrastructure and our vegetation. So here's some of the species in particular in Minnesota that are most sensitive to chloride that we're looking to protect. Of course, the macroinvertebrates are going to be the most immediately affected. They will just not survive in those higher concentrations of chloride. The fish, it will affect their ability to reproduce. And what happens with the fish and the amphibians is that those eggs that they lay are very soft, and those eggs will just absorb that chloride, and fewer of those eggs will actually survive the process. And then, of course, if the macroinvertebrate population is changing, that affects their available food chain as well. We also see negative impacts by our aquatic vegetation. And so it's really affecting kind of all of the life that's using and living in our lakes, our wetlands, and our streams. And so we want to keep Minnesota's waters fresh, not salty. Here is just a graph indicating a kind of severe case of that impact I said chloride or salt water has on our lakes. This is Brownie Lake in Minneapolis. And this lake is meromictic, meaning it does not mix anymore. And you can see that those red circles, that's the chloride concentration at the deepest part of the lake. And the blue triangles is the chloride concentration at the surface. So this gives us a lot of helpful information. And one, that if we weren't collecting water samples from the deepest part of the lake, we would not know really the extent or the magnitude of the chloride problem in this particular lake. And we also can see very clearly that this lake is not mixing anymore. And this is not an uncommon trend. We don't have a ton of other meromictic lakes in our state, but we definitely have seen lakes decrease the number of times that they are mixing. And as I mentioned, there is that new research out of the University of Minnesota that is indicating that those higher concentrations of chloride in our stormwater ponds may also be causing a release in phosphorus. So that's a negative impact we definitely want to avoid with all of the resources that go into those ponds. So as Laura mentioned, we do have a variety of sources. And I think we've known about them in the past, but we haven't maybe spent a ton of time until the last 5 years really digging in and better understanding how these sources are affecting our water resources. So of course, I think we are all familiar with the de-icing salt as a significant source of chloride. But water softening is actually another pretty significant contribution across our state. 75% of Minnesotans rely on groundwater as their primary source of drinking water. And our groundwater in Minnesota is just naturally hard. There's just a lot of minerals. There's a lot of contact, with the geology. So we have very hard to hard groundwater across much of our state. And so that unfortunately requires some softening or some hardness reduction. And the most common method for doing that is an ion exchange softener, which uses salt to kind of exchange those hard minerals and to bring them out of the water in our homes and our businesses. Another pretty significant source is fertilizer. So potassium chloride or potash, that actually has chloride. So if you hear the term potash used, that has chloride in it. And when the University of Minnesota received an LCCMR grant a few years ago, they did an overall statewide budget and found that fertilizer was a pretty significant source. We also use a fair amount of chloride in dust control practices. So those of you who might be responsible for maintaining gravel roads will know that calcium chloride is kind of the go-to product for keeping that dust down in the summertime. It's very effective because calcium chloride will actually pull moisture right out of the air. So it's much more effective than just water. Unfortunately, once that chloride makes its way into the environment, it has the same impact on our water resources. So here is that pie chart I mentioned, the University of Minnesota study that was done a few years ago. You can see the biggest chunk of chloride is de-icing salt or de-icing activities. But that if you combine that 22% and that 3%, so the amount of chloride coming from our wastewater treatment plants and our septic systems, the big majority of that is going to be from water softening activities. The 1% is permitted industries. So those would just be like industrial facilities who have their own separate permit and don't discharge directly to a wastewater treatment facility. And then that yellow is that fertilizer, that potassium chloride or that potash. So we do have a fair amount of other sources that are impacting our water resources across the state. So to address kind of the statewide problem that we're experiencing with chloride, we started working on a statewide chloride management plan. Some of you may have been partners and helped develop the Twin Cities metro area chloride plan many years ago. And shortly after that was completed, we started the development of the statewide plan. And so really the statewide plan kind of replaces that Twin Cities metro area chloride management plan. It includes all of that same information, but it's now expanded to address some of those additional sources. And when we look at our water quality conditions across the state, we are evaluating all of our surface waters and groundwater across the state and sharing that information in this plan. So the goal for this plan is to just help get us all on the same page so that we all have kind of the same information, the same resources, And then we have a plan. Now, it was designed to let every community decide what plan works best for them. So it's not a prescriptive management plan. It really just kind of, here's all the possible options and ideas that we have heard from our partners over the years in the development of this plan and the Twin Cities Metro Area Plan that we think will help your community make a difference. And so as we continue to move forward in addressing this pollutant, we hope this will be a resource. You are welcome to use this however you want. You can copy and paste it into your own local plan. You can just reference this as the plan you're going to follow for your implementation or addressing this pollutant. But we really did try to find something for everyone. So every audience has something they can contribute to helping us manage this, this challenging pollutant. So we do have a pretty significant section in here as well on what other organizations have done, a success stories chapter that really tried to pull out from over the last 10, 15 years, how have other organizations reduced their chloride, what have they done, so that we can all learn from those actions and see if those might work in our community as well. And really, we have it set up to help track our progress and well as our impacts on water quality. So I encourage you to check that out, especially if you're, if you have any chloride impairments in your watersheds, if you're doing any work to manage chloride or develop any site-specific plans. I encourage you to take a read. It is a very comprehensive. There's a lot of information in there. We really didn't want to leave anything out. So I hope you will check that out. And Karen would like a link to the plan. Yeah, we can put that in the chat. Maybe Laura, you could find that while I'm continuing on here. Some other actions that we've taken over the last few years. I don't think I put this in here, but we created a new chloride reduction program a few years ago. We received some clean water funds that allowed us to actually have a chloride reduction program. And so I have transitioned. I used to be in the watershed program years ago. And in the last several years have moved over to be the chloride reduction program coordinator. So now I run the state's chloride reduction program that has a lot of different aspects in it. And one of the key roles for me was to integrate chloride into more programs across the agency to try to get chloride more like, sediment and nutrients. We really don't have to think a whole lot about what we're going to do. It just gets implemented in a lot of our programs and our permit programs. And so I needed to just take a little extra time to coordinate with all these programs to see how chloride fits into work across the MPCA. And so one of the first steps was to coordinate with our MS4 program, and we developed some new requirements that is now in effect in the MS4 permit. We are requiring that all MS4s store their salt properly. And of course, we have very specific details on what that means in the permit, but it's also consistent with what we teach in our smart salting training classes. We also require a written snow and ice management policy, which we do have a model policy available on our website for folks to utilize if they don't have their own. Annual training of staff who are going to be doing winter maintenance activities are now also required. And we also are asking MS4s to have some type of regulatory mechanism in place to require anyone using and storing a large amount of salt in their community to also store it properly. So this can be done through the illicit discharge mechanism, or we also have created a model ordinance that I'll talk a little bit about shortly here. We also are asking that MS4 permittees educate specifically around chloride and what can be done to reduce it. And so, as I'm sure many of you are familiar, since we've had this training program for many years, we do have a smart salting training program. Now it has evolved. This initially started out as really a pilot training that we were using through a competitive grant to Fortin Consulting. And in the last several years, since we have now received those clean water funds, we now have a full-time staff person at the MPCA who actually runs and manages the smart salting training program. And so MPCA has taken over. We've kind of kept the training content and how we deliver it very similar, but it is a new statewide smart salting training program that the MPCA is administering at this point. So we have our parking lots and sidewalks class, a roads class. So those are our hands-on winter maintenance professionals classes. We have this new class that Laura had mentioned too, that we partnered with the Hennepin County Chloride Initiative on, is to create a class for property managers.
What?
And so this class is a really great class. It's a shorter 4-hour class. And I think we've got somebody who is unmuted out there. So if you guys could just quick check to make sure you're muted, I would appreciate that. Thank you. So this class is, initially, like Laura had mentioned, we have these private contractors who attend our parking lot and sidewalk class are all ready to go implement, what they've learned, and then they get pushback from their clients, the property managers. And so when we had some extra 319 funds a few years ago, we decided to create a new class targeted for that audience. After we've hosted a few of those classes, we found this is also a really fantastic class for environmental professionals. Now that we have the MS4 permit requirements, we also suggest that organizations who have an MS4 staff person, it's a great class for them, because we do cover all of the new elements of the MS4 permit, all those chloride components. And it really helps to, get them ready to do their best to support their winter maintenance operations and fulfilling those new permit requirements. So it's really a great class for kind of non-winter maintenance professionals to kind of get up to speed and know how they can help contribute. And then we also have our level 2 organization certification, which can be done through use of our tool. And we also have a class. We actually have a class coming up next week in December 8th. We are going to offer those every 6 months. And so we have one coming up on December 8th if you are interested in getting your organization level 2 certified. So the reason that we have spent so much of our resources and energy and effort on the training program is we really just feel like this is kind of the cornerstone to all of our chloride reduction efforts. And this is the best and the easiest way to get folks the information, the tools, the resources they need to go out and change their practices and make a difference. And in the benefit of this is everyone who has shared their success stories with us, who have said, hey, we made these changes, we did this, we reduced our salt use by 50%. They almost always report that they have saved money as well because they are having to buy less product. Even those who have had to purchase new equipment have been able to save money. And of course, we're reducing the amount of damage that we're causing to our infrastructure and our property. So there's really a lot of benefits to reducing our salt use and just helping people understand that reducing our salt use when it comes to winter maintenance activities does not mean we are compromising safety in any way, shape, or form. Here is an example that I really love to share because this is from Mayo Clinic. And so if anybody is going to make sure that they have extremely safe surfaces, it's going to be a health facility who has a variety of people with varying disabilities and experiences with snow. A lot of people travel from all over the country to come to Mayo Clinic who may not be used to snow and ice conditions. And so they attended training back in 2018 and they made some changes and were able to reduce their salt use by 60%. And they didn't give me the specific numbers, but they did say they have saved hundreds of thousands of dollars as well as reducing their overall salt use. We do hear directly from Mayo Clinic in our new promotional video. If you go to the MPCA's YouTube channel, we've created a salt album. And so we've got several different videos. And one of them is a short little promotional video, just hearing from people who've been through the training program, sharing their experiences and their thoughts on the importance of our training program. So I encourage you to check out that video when you have some time. We also have a video that was just released in the last 6 months that is promoting our Smart Salting for Property Management class. So you'll find that on that as well. And so in this class, like I said, we cover a lot more than just, we don't get into the details of how do you calibrate your equipment. Some of those things that really just the hands-on winter maintenance professionals need to know. We help people understand how salt works, what types of different products are out there, the benefits, the negatives to all of these alternatives and all of these tools, as well as talking about these available resources, regulations, the concerns and issues, of course, everyone has with legal issues. And then we do touch briefly as well on water softening. And then we have these great posters that we have created that we give to those who have been through our property management class, and they can, put this up in their buildings to let those coming through their facilities know what they're doing and what it means to be a smart salter and why it's important to them. I'm also excited to announce we have a GreenCorps member this year at the MPCA who I'm getting a little bit of their time. I'm sharing a little bit of that member's time with my colleague, Britt. And she is creating a new training certification called Smart Salting for Local Leaders. So I'm hoping maybe by next year, maybe we'll have one of those workshops part of this conference, and you guys can all participate in that. So she is doing a great job so far of getting ideas and from local leaders on what would be an effective workshop or platform to help them get up to speed on how they can help influence salt use in their communities and their organizations. And of course, we have the Smart Salting tool. This has been around for a while, but it has recently been upgraded. And this really helps to just track progress and plan out what changes need to be made. It is a free online tool that is open to anyone to create an account and start using. I will say, however, it's very detail oriented. So if you don't do winter maintenance, we're not quite, it's going to be a little confusing. You might not be able to answer those questions, but you are all welcome to go ahead and create an account. And we are actually in the process of expanding and updating this tool. So we had a kind of a feasibility or a development phase of the project where we figured out what platforms and data and information we need to add some new features to this tool. So one of the biggest features is we will be making this a GIS-based platform where you can select your watershed area, your city, and we will use the best available information and data, and we will provide you with an estimate of what are all the sources of chloride in your community. So it's great to know on a statewide level where all our chloride is coming from, but really what matters is where is that chloride coming from at the local level? Because if you are out in a part of the state that really doesn't have a ton of paved roads, then obviously, spending a ton of time addressing that source is maybe not a best use of everyone's time. And so, we'll get this new, pie chart that'll kind of provide a rough estimate, which we will also allow the users to update and change. They can say, hey, you know what? I actually know how much salt we're putting down on our roads. I don't need to use the estimate, and you can modify it as well to make it as specific as possible for your area. And we will also have new sections. So we are adding water softening. We are adding fertilizer. I hope in the future we'll get some more data on industrial sources of chloride, but it will really be much more of a comprehensive tool that will help you address all sources of chloride, and you'll be able to customize it for your specific watershed or community. We have a lot of available resources in addition to the training and that smart salting tool. If you do not already subscribe to our Smart Salting newsletter, I highly encourage you to do so. That goes out about quarterly, and we will have all the latest, greatest information on what's going on in the smart salting world. The last issue, we just highlighted that great chloride management template that the Hennepin County Chloride Initiative created and shared that with folks, as well as promoted a chloride reduction grant that we have offered in the last year or two. We have some funds to offer some chloride reduction grants. So we have also built in chloride into some of our existing programs. So Minnesota GreenCorps was one of the first programs, in addition to the MS4 permit, that I started working with to figure out how do we get chloride in there. And so now chloride is a focus area. And every year we have had, anywhere from 8 to 11 GreenCorps members across our state who are working on chloride, in addition to other environmental things as well. But it's just been a really great way to help kind of give a little kickstart to communities who want to work on chloride. We also have incorporated into the Green Step Cities program. We have chloride components in there. And then we just have a lot of information. We tried to make this the statewide chloride resources page, kind of a clearinghouse. So it's information we've created, our partners have created that have given us permission to share, so that we kind of have it all in one spot for all of us to utilize. So I just want to highlight this chloride model ordinance. So we did hire a contractor who has experience in developing ordinances, and we pulled together a technical expert committee who provided us feedback that was made up of cities and watershed districts to say, okay, if we're going to have some type of an ordinance that's going to help a community to reduce salt use, what element should it contain? And then how can we write that in a way that's as easy as possible to integrate it into an existing ordinance structure? So we came up with 4 different sections of the model ordinance. The first one is to require anybody who's going to, request a license to do snow and ice management services in the city to be trained and certified. The second one addresses that new MS4 permit requirement, that anyone, this would be an additional way to address that model or to address that requirement to require everyone to store salt properly would be through an ordinance. And so we have all of the details in here for that. The third one, we actually took right from 9 Mile Creek Watershed District and Riley Purgatory Bluff Watershed District, who at the time had already had some chloride requirements in their watershed management plan. And this was on new or redevelopment construction projects need to have a point person who has been through the training program, and they need to have a chloride management plan for their site. And then the fourth component is a sweeping requirement. So this would be an ordinance that would just ask if anyone, kind of over applies or has a spill or just kind of misses the storm event, rather than leave that salt there, to actually come back and clean it up. And I will mention that a lot of organizations have taken some of these concepts and these ideas and implemented them more as policies rather than ordinances. So several cities have actually put, whenever they're putting out a bid for services, that you must be smart salting trained and certified in order to even bid on their services for snow and ice. Metro Transit has it in theirs as well. And so there's a lot of different ways that you could actually implement these more so as policies if you are not an organization that has the authority to implement ordinances. I already mentioned the GreenCorps program. We usually are opening up our GreenCorps site program for the year in February. So this February, if you are interested in looking to get a GreenCorps member for your organization, that would be the time to start thinking about what kind of work you would want this GreenCorps member to do. And the benefit of this program is that the MPCA hires all of the GreenCorps members, places them within the host sites who best fits their experience and their interest. And then we actually pay the GreenCorps members as well. So it's a free 11-month intern for your organization to just kind of help give you a little kickstart on some environmental issues for your community. We also have 2 loan programs that have been around for a long time, but now we have just specifically integrated chloride into one of the priority areas. So we have our Clean Water Partnership Loan Program, as well as our Small Business Assistance Program. So both of those are 0% interest, and they are eligible for equipment upgrades. And the Clean Water Partnership Loan, you can also do things like develop ordinances, education, outreach materials. So you can use those loan funds for a wider variety of projects. The Small Business Assistance is limited to just equipment upgrades that will produce an environmental benefit. So I encourage you to check that out, share that with your partners and the people in your community, that those are open year round. You can apply anytime and get on the list for those loan funds. As I mentioned before, we also received some funds the last 2 fiscal years to start a chloride reduction grant program. So far, the language has been very specific that it had to address water softening. So the last 2 grants that we have offered have been very focused on addressing water softening as a source of chloride. So we did award our first grant back in July, and we have a RFP open right now actually for our second one. And so a great way to stay on top of these is to subscribe to that newsletter, because of course, anytime we have a grant RFP, it will be posted in that Smart Salting newsletter. I hope I named it intentionally the Chloride Reduction Grant Program and not the Water Softening Reduction Program, because I'm hoping in the future we will continue to get these funds, and we will maybe get some increased flexibility to use these grant funds to address other sources other than just water softening. So our first grant was awarded. We needed to have it be one large contract because we of course don't have the additional staff needed to manage a grant program. And so this was a great partnership between 3 different communities who are going to partner with Fortin Consulting, who will bring water softening professionals into their communities and focus on the businesses and kind of non-residential sites across their communities to upgrade, optimize, and potentially replace water softeners for a chloride reduction. So I'm very excited to learn. This is our first one we've done in Minnesota. I don't know that actually any state has a grant program for addressing water softening. So probably the first in the country, but I'm very excited to learn, see what they're going to learn from this whole process and see how we can also take some of that information and integrate it into some of our other work. We also developed when we developed that model ordinance, we also developed a guide for creating a water softening rebate program. So we looked at rebate programs across the country. Of course, Minnesota has not had one yet, so we really had to learn what other states had been doing. And we developed a step-by-step guidance document for if a local organization wants to implement a rebate program to address water softening, here's all the steps and here's some considerations to make when developing a rebate program. So I think if you are looking into this, I know we had a CWP loan that went to a community who wanted to use that loan to develop a rebate program. So I'm looking forward to hearing how that goes and learning how a rebate program might help address water softening salt in our state. There is also other resources on our website that we did not create, but our partners have created and shared with us. This was created by Freshwater Society and several local watershed districts to develop a model snow and ice management policy. So this again would be great for those MS4 permittees who maybe don't have one, or even if you have a snow and ice management policy, we have heard really great things from cities who have checked this out, have ultimately switched to this one because they just felt like there was better protection for them in this model snow and ice management plan, in that we really made sure, I was on the technical advisory committee for developing this, that professional judgment that is so critical. When you're managing snow and ice, you have to kind of sometimes make decisions on the fly, that this model snow and ice management policy does a really great job of kind of allowing that, kind of covering the community or the organization who uses this so that they do have that flexibility. We also have some educational displays. We've had this one we created several years ago, hasn't been out at the fair for a while, but we do loan this out now. So we just loaned this out to a city who's going to keep it through the winter, and whoever the next one on my list who is interested in having this display up at their city hall or their local, education center, or, anywhere you find you might have a lot of people who might be interested in stopping and reading and learning more about the salt issue, just send me an email and we'll get you on the list. We also partnered with Isaac Walton League of America on their Winter Salt Watch program. This is a really fantastic program to really engage the community in looking for chloride. And what they do is they mail out a test kit to those who participate in their program, and you get 4 test strips where they can actually go out and measure the amount of chloride using a test strip. Which I was a little suspicious about when we first heard about it. So I did ask our monitoring staff to compare these test strips to our actual chloride data. And it was surprisingly accurate. So of course, it's not something that we can use, for official purposes, but it's a really great tool to kind of indicate where we might need to go and collect more data, more information. I know we've got 2 watershed districts who've actually also partnered on their own with Isaac Walton League to design their own specific kind of partnership, and that's Coon Creek Watershed District and 9 Mile Creek Watershed District. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities to partner with Isaac Walton League if you're interested in doing, some kind of awareness creation and some engagement with the residents, and also get some helpful data back that will help you kind of understand, well, maybe we need to go monitor some of these lakes or streams because we're seeing these high test kit results. So it's a really wonderful program. They've got this great app that you just download on your phone. They upload their picture of their little test strip with the card that shows the level. So it's a really fantastic program. So all of this information that I've shared with you today can be found on the MPCA's website. So we have 5 different, sections. That statewide resources, that's going to be kind of that clearinghouse of a lot of these resources and educational information and videos that are available for everybody to utilize however you see fit. The salt applicators, that's where you're going to want to go to learn more about the training program. And then the water permit holders, that will get you more information about the MS4 permit. We also have chloride limits, being placed in our wastewater program. So we have a lot of information about the wastewater program and how chloride is part of that, as well as our industrial stormwater permit program. So I encourage you to check out the website to learn more about our resources. And so I think that is all we have for now. And now we can go ahead and open it up for questions. So I didn't have the chat open. Let me see if we've got some questions, and maybe they've already been answered. So other alternatives to water softening. So there actually are, so this has been something that we've been looking at. We're right now partnering with the Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District in Wisconsin. They actually had a little training class that they developed and offered to local water softening professionals and plumbers in their community to kind of educate them on. They just found that a lot of them, they don't really know or aren't thinking about optimizing or adjusting water softeners for reduced chloride export. And so we're working with them to actually bring that training and to incorporate that class into our smart salting program. And alternatives is something that, there are what's called water conditioning. And basically the ones that I've seen mostly are you basically wrap like this electrical component around the pipes, and it basically prevents those minerals from attaching to the pipes. So it doesn't remove them from the water itself, but it actually just prevents them. It keeps them somewhat larger in size so that they can't attach to the walls of the pipes and your water heater. And so those water conditioning systems, we had a presentation at the SALT Symposium this past August from a speaker in Canada who did a pilot study, and they on a tax, it's called a tax system, TACS, which was they found to actually be somewhat effective. So it really depends on what your level of hardness is, but there are non-salt options out there that really deserve some additional research. I actually have a group of University of Purdue students who are doing a capstone project with me, and we're looking at this specifically, looking at ways to maybe modify existing home softening systems that is economical, but also comparing and looking at these water conditioning systems to see if that's a feasible option for homeowners, because there's just not a lot of great third-party research on water conditioning systems. There's some research out there, but it may be a little bit biased based on who's doing the research. So that is a great question. And yes, they're all alternatives, and I think they deserve some more research. All right, Matt. Hi, Matt. Matt wants me to talk about the impacts to lakes that become meromictic. Seems like this would be devastating. So yeah, is there any hope for these lakes? I don't know. For Brownie Lake in particular, it was set up, in a very highly urban area, and it is a very deep and lake with a narrow surface area. So when we were looking to where we wanted to monitor chloride, kind of when we had like limited resources, we can only monitor so many lakes. We used what's called the Osgood index to figure out which lakes are most likely to kind of go meromictic based on just their bathymetry. So I think for Brownie Lake, it being so deep with such a narrow surface area, that's just going to be a natural challenge for mixing anyway. Now that we've got this very high amount of chloride in the deepest part of Brownie Lake, I don't know how we're going to get it out. And so, we'd obviously have to kind of turn the faucet off on the chloride making its way into the lake first. But that might just take of way too long. And so that is something that I think hopefully we don't have to spend too much time figuring out what we're going to do for those situations. Hopefully we can prevent that from happening and keep the lake out, keep the chloride out of those lakes and protect them. But I'm not quite sure what we're going to do about particularly Brownie Lake and maybe some of these other lakes that aren't quite as deep with that very small surface area. Maybe there is a little bit of a faster recovery time if we can kind of turn the faucet off on the chloride making its way in. And then we've got a question here from Karen on the legislation. Yeah, so there has been a legislative attempts in the past. The MPCA has never been the lead on that. There's been some wonderful organizations who've been supporting it, including SOS, Stop Over Salting, which is a fantastic citizen-based organization dedicated to addressing chloride. And it has not quite made it. So I'm not quite sure if there will be, if there is hope for that legislation in the future. It really comes down to those liability issues. I think from the sessions that I was attending and testifying at, it seemed like everyone was on board with the environmental message and the ideas, but it's it seems like it's stuck on, folks can't agree on how much the liability is too much and what's protective of residents versus businesses. And so unfortunately, that just has not moved forward. I'm not sure if there's a future for it or not, but that would be great to give some extra protection to those private contractors who of course are trained and implementing the practices appropriately. What other questions do we have? Or what else are you guys doing? What other ideas? What are some of you guys doing to address chloride in your communities? And yes, that fact sheet that Mike posted in the chat, we actually do have a link to that on our website. We have a whole water softening section on that statewide resources. So we've got links if you want to learn more about any of these. We really try to find Wisconsin Saltwise has actually been a really fantastic organization who's done some great work on chloride. And actually in the last year, we have created a national chloride working group made up of state environmental agencies from across the country. So I'm co-leading that with Region 5 EPA, and we meet about every 6 months, and we've got several states from Region 5, we've got Region 3, Region 1, so we've got a lot of states who we're all now kind of working together and talking about chloride specifically. So that's exciting to see that chloride has made the list a priority also on EPA's list. And we now officially have a national chloride working group made up of different state environmental agencies who are working on chloride. So it's exciting to be a part of that and to learn from other states and potentially share resources. We're already starting to kind of share some of the things we've been working on with other states, and they are sharing, of course, their lessons learned and their resources with us. So,
well, Brooke, thank you so much for all this great information. I hope that all these organizations here today learned something and have some great takeaways from all of your great information. Personally, I just Google MPCA salt and I get right to that salt page with all of your resources. I do that quite often. So anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And Brooke's email address was in there, and I recommend just subscribing to her newsletter as well, because that's really keeps you on top of things. Jan, I don't know if you wanted to try and share HR Green's video. Is that going to work now, do you think, or should we end the session?
I will try it again, and if it doesn't work, we'll end.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Doesn't look like it will work, so we will just end the session. Thank you, everyone.